Governor Carey, Governor Cuomo, Commissioner Moore representing Governor Pataki. If Governor Pataki had been here, we would have had a group that more than would rival the three tenors. I want you to know that. President Springer, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's fitting on this day of celebration, when we've listened, we've learned, we've laughed, we've shed a few tears, we've celebrated, that we accord appropriate recognition to the singular work of the three governors who have been involved in this matter. Clearly, we went from an age of darkness to a time of humane light and caring when Hugh Carey's pen signed the consent decree 25 years ago. And the beauty of it was that the Carey administration proceeded with a firm commitment to make it happen. And they asked Tom Moore to lead that effort for most of his administration. Governor Cuomo embraced the cause with empathy and vigor. Throughout his 12 years, the programs in the community expanded. I reminded Governor just a few minutes ago that it was under his guidance and direction that Willowbrook became the College of Staten Island, perhaps the most beautiful of CUNY's 20 campuses. I have fond memories of the groundbreaking ceremony which he led, and a heart had to prove it. What had become a wasteland was transformed into a center of hope and learning. Governor Pataki maintained the initiatives of his predecessors, but he was determined to put his own mark on implementing the decree. And as you've heard repeatedly today, New York Cares was his initiative, is his initiative. It's on target, and it's making an enormous difference in the lives and the aspirations of parents and those who are developmentally disabled, the assurance of a place to be. We have here three exemplary leaders who have revolutionized the care of a once nearly forgotten group of people. Their surrogates in this effort were Commissioners Coughlin, Introne, Slezak, Webb, Howe, and Moore. To recognize their contributions in no way diminishes the part played by legislators, in no way played by the families and friends of the retarded then and now, or the professionals and administrators in the field, or advocates and judiciary members such as Geraldo and Judge Bartels. We have to recognize that without leadership and courage in the executive branch, nothing would have happened, nothing will happen in the future without the continued commitment at that level. What these three governors have done is to set an example for the nation as well as the state. It's my pleasure now to introduce, for the purposes of making a presentation, the president of this college, the dynamic Marlene Springer.
You'll notice one of the additions to the furniture when I followed Jim Murphy is a podium that goes up and down. I used to have a footstool, but that was much too awkward. I'm delighted today as the president of the College of Staten Island to award the President's Medals to these three honorable gentlemen. First will be Honorable Hugh L. Carey. Governor Carey, if you'll step forward. In November of 1974, Hugh L. Carey was first elected governor of New York and then was reelected in November of 1978. When he took office in January of 1975, New York State was facing financial disaster, default of the Urban Development Corporation, and the threatened defaults of several other major state authorities, the near bankruptcy of the New York City fiscal, and the fiscal crisis in Yonkers and other cities in the state. Under his stewardship, the state administration embarked on a major managerial restructuring, which included overhauling the grave deficiencies in the very state agency whose mission it was to sustain and care for those least able to meet their own needs. During his gubernatorial campaign, Hugh Carey visited Willowbrook State School and vowed to clean up the institution. He kept his promise. After he was elected in November, he made a return visit to the institution, and on April 30th, 1975, he signed the Willowbrook Consent Decree. Hugh Carey's campaign pledge led to the most significant commitment ever made by a government to its citizens with mental retardation. There was a fundamental shift in public policy throughout the state and the creation of a separate government entity responsible for these changes. In 1978, the Office of Mental Retardation and Developmental Disabilities, OMRDD, was founded. The Carey administration began moving people from state institutions into residences in the community and placed the resources of the New York State behind services for people with mental retardation. This started the movement that would change the world for them. It is with great pleasure on this 25th anniversary of the signing of the historic consent judgment that I have presented the College of Staten Island's President's Medal to Honorable Hugh L. Carey in recognition of his outstanding service to all the citizens of the New York State community. Governor Carey.
Thank you, President Springer. Many people receiving prestigious awards like this tell you how reluctant they are to accept them. I am not. I'm putting this here so that all who helped achieve this success at Willowbrook will understand that I'm accepting it on your behalf, And yes, being honest, I would have swum across the Narrows to get this award because of what you've done to bring us here today. That's what I feel about it. Secondly, and when a political person says secondly, hold on to your seats. I'm so thankful to my friend, Brother Murphy, President Murphy, who I've known since my childhood, which is many ages ago. And he's part of this miracle that we mark today. The miracle is this place of desolation, this place of discrimination, of neglect, has been turned into a resource, an emblem, an actual place of commemoration, because he was head of the city university when all of this occurred and the change to the College of Staten Island. So I'm sharing this, if I may say, this reunion with him today. Also, I'm enabled to have a reunion with my esteemed fellow alumnus of St. John's Law School, the Honorable Mario Cuomo. And having been here for some of the sessions today, my good friend Mario, it's just like the old days when we served together. I'm getting all the blessings and you're getting all the blame. No blame is involved here. I share this day with Mario as well, as he and I begin to approach advanced age. Begin to approach it. More and more people come up to me and say, you know, you're looking pretty good. And I say, yes, there are 3 stages in life: youth, middle age, and you're looking pretty good. After that, Mario, you're looking pretty good. When we both looked at the picture, shall I say, it wasn't so much a picture as a desecration of what had happened at Willowbrook. We were conjoined because at that time, Governor Cuomo was Secretary of State of the state of New York, but he was also part of our legal team, the legal team that comprised Judah Gribbetts and his counsel Clarence Sundrum, who's here today. Peter Goldmark, the budget director. I could go on and on as to the people. Barbara Blum was here. The team got together, and this was a team operation. Would we dissemble? Would we attempt to find an excuse? Would we prolong, procrastinate? No. the legal brains got together with those who had the social conscience of our administration and said, we will sign that consent decree in the very first month of our administration. People have talked about the rescue of the city from financial collapse and likewise the, shall we, restructuring of the state. But in my memory, if I have to account to my maker, which I will do in a short order, and he says to me, name one thing you tried to do on earth that you can call a blessing. And I would have to say, and I would say Willowbrook. So we're here today to mark a miracle. I'm not a theologian. I'm not a preacher like Monsignor from the Archdiocese here. But it seems to me before every miracle, there's pain and suffering. As the rabbi said, it's Passover time, Easter time. And the most innocent person in the history of the world had to be put to a tragic death so we could begin to celebrate the resurrection. The miracle of Willowbrook is that we found parents and residents who were willing to get together with lawyers and protest in most, yes, ardent, assiduous, courageous efforts their own government. A revolution, which may not satisfy Dr. Bronson yet, with all due regard to you, Dr. Bronson, I met Saul Alinsky long before I met you. And keep up your work, because in an Irish heart, a little anarchy is a very good thing, a little anarchy. And today, I began to think I'd already advanced to the pearly gates and was sitting somewhere in heaven, because never in my whole life and history and recollection do I recall so many good things being said about lawyers and people in the publishing business. Somebody had to distribute the food. Somebody had to keep up the work. That's what we're here for today. To get a commitment from all of us that we will keep up this work, the implementation and enforcement of this miracle. It is not self-policing. Thankfully, under Governor Cuomo and his administration, now Governor Pataki, there is every assurance that a commitment will be kept. Which commitment am I talking about? We were very fortunate when I went to Congress in 1960. I served under the first president in my recollection who had a member of his own family who suffered from a developmental disability. President John F. Kennedy said in these fateful words, and I was there when he said them, "Those who suffer the hand of fate must never suffer from neglect." And he signed the first use of the Social Security system for SSI, we call it SSI, which meant the first money to be used in operational research and assistance to those who were developmentally disabled. We didn't call them developmentally disabled in those days. We called them mentally retarded. Follow on, it was my experience after that to work closely with his brother, Robert F. Kennedy. He served as senator when I was still in Congress. I had been to Willowbrook to view for myself what was taking place here. I was then serving on the Committee on Labor and Education in Congress under the leadership of the late Adam Clayton Powell. Through his agency and mine, I was given the opportunity to head up a committee on education of the handicapped. We were told, don't ever try to get into the business of mental retardation. It's too big a field. So we plied away. We started the first school for the deaf, first high school. I had gone to St. John's University in the company of a deaf-blind student, John Smithtas. I watched him get a summa cum laude in my class, and the only learning he had was palpable. You had to tap his hands to communicate, and today, John Smithtas heads up the Institute for the Deaf-Blind at Kings Point, New York, and he administers it. He writes poetry. He has a family. I said, if he can do that, if that man can do that, what else can we do for people who are not in our society as members? And I thought we were doing a great deal because I was associated at that time in my district with a fellow named Bill Conklin, Senator Bill Conklin, who had a retarded child. He was the voice of the developmentally disabled, mentally retarded, in the Senate. He exacted from me in the person, candidly, of some of the great stars who are not here today. Yes, Ida Mae Rappaport, Helen Kaplan. Those are the people who forced my hand, and thank God they were there to do it. First, they wanted a State Department of the Handicapped named the State Department of Mental Retardation. That was a hard sell. We would have had a constitutional amendment. The settlement was to move to the new parlance and call it the Office of Mental Retardation and Developmental Disabilities. If we had done nothing else, that would have been an achievement. But thank God, Judge Bartell stepped in and said, the state is going to do more. So many times you'll hear that we should be wary of judicial legislation, the courts taking over the function of the legislature. Thank God, Judge Bartell stepped up and said, the law of this land requires that you go there and you straighten out Willowbrook and do it now. That's what he said. In his memory, and all those who are not here today, let us undertake this commitment, that we must make certain that it doesn't happen here, and possibly what Dr. Bronson means, we have to seek out others who suffer as those who did at Willowbrook. And they're there. They're in the tenements. They're in parts of our far-flung country on the Indian reservations. They're in the neglected people who have not been reached yet by this overwhelming prosperity. That's not our job today, but we can make sure that if they need a voice, we speak up. So the work is still undone. And maybe we need now the miracle of the year 2000. And that miracle, I would remind you, also is spoken of in the liturgy. And I'd have to do this because, candidly, the one worrisome day today is that I might go through this whole day and never say that there were two people from Staten Island who stood at my elbow when I signed that decree, Betty Connolly and John Markey. I'm so pleased to see Mr. Connolly here today. And if we need to be reminded what our function is, you're far more prepared to carry on that function than I because you've seen the horror. It's very simple for me. When I wore the uniform of the United States, and it was part of another miracle, when the men and women from the streets of New York and San Francisco and Texas and Montana were put in uniform to fight the most organized, destructive force of human beings on earth, the Nazis and the Japanese and their allies, there was a miracle. That Holocaust was ended. And the tyranny of fascism, Nazism was ended. And much blood was spilled. But we learned something. My unit and I were in a position in the Harz Mountains to liberate a concentration camp at Nordhausen-Dora. It was the camp where they were building blitz bombs. The scientists, the most gifted minds they could find in Germany and elsewhere, were put to work to produce horrible engines of death, the blitz bomb. No eyes, no sense, just to unleash destruction on innocent human victims in cities along the rim of Europe. And they used slave labor, and they worked them till they died, literally died. And then in all the horror that I can never imagine or never want to see again, they took the bodies as they died and they piled them like cordwood, one upon the other, in neat German fashion, neat Nazi fashion. And we, believe this or not, when we came there, we found living among the dead and separated the living from the dead, and then got the townspeople to come and try to bury them and try to save those we could. I made a vow that day that I would never lend my effort or support to anything which puts the power of life and death in human life in the hands of any government. It's not there. Life doesn't come from our government. Our job is to preserve it and enhance it, not to destroy it. The only way I can keep that vow, and you can help me keep that vow, is when we see injustice like this. We see persecution in the name of social service, or worse, an attempt to separate the gifted from the powerless. Then, like the kids who died in Normandy, like the kids who gave their lives at Iwo Jima, we have to carry on the fight. That's our commitment today. I thank you for this award. It'll be in my possession, so I'm reminded with all the power, yes, all the power and determination I have left. Not only should we say Willowbrook will not happen again, but where there are other Willowbrooks in our society, we've got to take this spirit and put it into the law and enforce it so we can say we've been part of a miracle too. Yes, the other miracle I would speak of is when, in my witness, the Messiah happened to cure 10 lepers. And after that, he looked, and one leper came and said, "Thank you." He said, "Where are the other 9? Well, we've been cured now. We've been cured of a horrible malignancy that was in our society. And we are the 9 others who benefit. One of these days, we're going to be asked, what did you do after I cured you? We're cured, in a sense, through the intervention of the Willowbrook Decree. By God, there's a lot of curing to do in this country, but the spirit of Willowbrook and this memorable day of miracles, let us go forth and do our best. Thank you.
Our next awardee, the Honorable Mario Cuomo. Governor Cuomo. Mario Cuomo was elected New York State's 52nd governor in 1982 and won re-election in 1986 and 1990. In these 12 years at the helm, the governor steered the state through 2 recessions, balanced 12 consecutive budgets, created more than 500,000 jobs, and launched the largest economic development initiative in New York's history. People with mental retardation benefited from this growth and from the governor's leadership in the area of socially progressive legislation. Under the Cuomo administration, the move to deinstitutionalization that began in the Carey administration continued and expanded. The state began to look at the specific program models to be used to form the core of the community-based residential system. The community residence, the intermediate care facility, supported apartments a few years later, and finally, the individualized residential alternative. Additionally, day treatment programs were developed to provide day services to the new community residents. OMRDD regulations were put in place, and that agency began to strategically plan to meet then current and future needs of people with developmental disabilities. In 1987, 15 years after the historic Willowbrook lawsuit was filed, Governor Cuomo fulfilled a promise and closed the Staten Island Developmental Center, formerly Willowbrook State School. A statement issued by Governor Cuomo and Arthur Webb, the then commissioner of OMRDD, said, "The end of this institution symbolizes the success and appropriateness of New York State's commitment to provide an extensive and comprehensive program of community living opportunities for its citizens with mental retardation and developmental disabilities." It's with great pleasure on this 25th anniversary of the signing of the historical Willowbrook consent judgment that I have presented the College of Staten Island's President's Medal to the Honorable Mario Cuomo in recognition of his outstanding service to all the citizens of the New York community. Governor Cuomo.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. This should not take me long. Governor Carey, as usual, has covered the subject matter with characteristic eloquence and thoroughness. He didn't miss the Bible. I think there were 2 references to the Koran. And he hasn't left a great deal for me to say. I'm not surprised. I was Governor Carey's first appointee in 1975. I was proud and pleased to have been asked by him to serve in state government, especially with him, because I knew him to be a leader who believed that government was, as Abraham Lincoln put it, the coming together of people to do for one another collectively what they could not do as well or at all privately and individually. In my own amateurish way, since I had had no experience in politics before then, it seemed to me that that's what government should be, not something to substitute for the efforts of individuals who, in fulfillment of their personal responsibility, could accomplish a task on their own, but to intervene at that moment when all the best efforts of the individual, all the best intentions weren't enough to survive with decency, to realize their own aspirations. I knew enough about history to know that there was nothing in our Constitution that ordered us to love one another, to help one another, to fill the gap in the life of your brother or sister. There was nothing in the Constitution that assured us anything except freedom and liberty, and that was a marvelous legacy by itself. I knew enough history to know that it was for more than 100 years that we lived without that commitment to one another as a civic society, and saw poor people work a whole lifetime and die poor, saw people enslaved, saw women oppressed, saw every sort of social degradation occur with the government aloof, remote, not responsive. And were it not for the Depression that forced a former governor from the state of New York, Franklin Roosevelt, to take a second look at the Constitution and the laws and to say they're not adequate to the event, they're not adequate to the challenge, were it not for Roosevelt's reluctant energizing of government, were it not for his reading of Lincoln and his being reminded that what government is supposed to do is meet the need that people are not capable of meeting for themselves. And government, of course, is the second or last alternative, but it is the alternative. That's what Hugh Carey believed. I understood that from his career as a congressman. I understood that from knowing him, and he proved it instantly. Even before he was sworn in as governor, he addressed the nursing home crisis. Most of you won't remember that. But it was a singular event in American history. It was a tremendous crisis of nursing homes in which old people were being abused. I know because he asked me to work on it, and we did. It produced eventually Joe Hines, a special prosecutor for nursing homes, and the first nursing home program, Medicaid fraud program, in the history of the United States of America. I know how he felt about the good uses of government, because when New York City was virtually bankrupt, and when the whole United States stood in peril because if New York City had been allowed, literally, to be bankrupted, and there were responsible voices calling for that, imagine what that would have said around the world. All of New York State's finances would have collapsed. Forget about the developmentally disabled or the public schools. And Carey, understanding that, said no to bankruptcy. And we'll solve this problem with what? With government. And he invented the Municipal Assistance Corporation, and he invented a program, in effect, that helped to finance the city of New York and bring it back to life. Look at its grand stature, and I know how much we owe Hugh Carey. And I'm not going to repeat all the horrors of Willowbrook. You know them better than I do. And I'm not going to repeat the long litany of people to whom we owe thanks. You've heard that list over and over. There's one point simply that I wish to make. I'm grateful to Hugh Carey for giving me the chance to serve. I've always felt a little bit like the moon and thought of Hugh Carey as the sun in my political career. Well, without him, I wouldn't have had any political career. And without him, I wouldn't have had the inspiration that kept me in it for as long as I stayed, which was 20 years. But he did say one thing about today that I'd like to reiterate. Today is a celebration, of course, but as I stood listening to the speakers this morning in the second panel, I was in late, but I did get to hear enough to have the event characterized for me. There were a lot of people saying, yes, it's a celebration, but it's not enough. There's more to be done, and there is more to be done. We're a long way from being able to say that we as a society or that this government as a government is doing enough for the developmentally disabled. Yes, of course, we've made a giant step forward, but there's more to do, to get them educated, to get them integrated, to get them to do research, to put this vast, fantastic power we have of intelligence in this country to work in avoiding the incidence of developmental disability, in dealing with it when it occurs. A great deal more to do, and we have to be militant, and he said that. But there's more even beyond the developmentally disabled. We lived through a number of trends in the time I was in government. When I came in with Hugh Carey, it was a sad time economically. It was a time in which governments were in trouble fiscally, and that was an important part of the moment. And what it did was desiccate government's ability to do things. Imagine what Hugh Carey could have done with the budget that we have today. Imagine what could have been done in this state and in this country if we had had the wealth we have now. $1 trillion, someone says, over the next decade or so in surplus. $1 trillion in surplus? How about all the people with the developmental disabilities that still need help? How about all the people who are mentally ill that need help? How about all the old people who aren't receiving the attention they should in nursing homes, some of whom can't get the nursing home care they need? How about Medicare people? The poor ones, they're not all poor, but some certainly are. The ones who can't afford prescription drugs. How about 44 million people without health insurance, which means a 37-year-old woman with 2 children but nobody else at home to help her supply them with their needs. 37 years old, making approximately the average wage in this country for a household, say $38,000 in a place like New York, not poor enough for Medicaid, not old enough for Medicare, and no employer who provides her with a plan. Think of her getting breast cancer. Does she get the operation? Of course she does. Does she get health care? Of course she does. But she'll be bankrupted by it, and in all candor, it probably won't be as good as my daughters would have with their good health insurance policies. 44 million of them. There is no way to help them except through government, let's be honest. There is no way to help all the poor children who are now addicted. There is no way to strengthen the public school system, the colleges like this brand new virtually institution without some kind of government assistance. That's the message of Willowbrook too. That we come together through our government to help one another. I hear with sadness even great Democratic presidents in recent history saying the era of big government is over. How dare you? How dare you? Are you talking about Social Security? Oh, no, 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 of course not. Are you talking about Medicare for the... Oh, no, 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 of course not. Are you talking about the Resolution Trust Corporation that bailed out people who were depositors in great institutions? Oh, no, 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 of course not. Are you talking about the space program? Oh, no, no, of course not. Then whom are you talking about? There's only one group they're talking about, the people who need it most, the poorest people, the people without health. For them, big government is not available. For all these others, yes, perhaps, and maybe even a huge new tax cut. Wouldn't that be wonderful? I think when you think about Willowbrook, you should think about all the response government hasn't yet made to the needs of this society. All we could do. I saw the rabbi, I listened to the rabbi and was moved as usual. I saw the Monsignor, I listened to the Monsignor and was moved by what the Monsignor had to say at the prayer before the meal. As usual, I listened to Hugh Carey. Talk like a rabbi and a Monsignor, and I was moved by him. But what it reminded me of is the reason I came into public service, And the simple rationale that drove me into it, I didn't know a whole lot of politics, and it all seemed so simple to me. Lincoln seemed absolutely right. I'm not going to argue about big government, little government, socialists, communists, conservatives, liberals. Those are all labels. And most of them are presumptuous and pretentious. They pretend to tell you all about a person's positions, and they don't really. I think of the common sense of it. Government is coming together for us to help one another, because that's the whole law. We were told that 6,000 or 5,000 years ago when the first Hebrew looked up to his Hebrew God and said, "Tell me, what am I?" And that God leaned down and said, "Tzedakah." Look to your left, look to your right, look to all the others, even the ones with a different color. You are brothers and sisters. I am the Father. You are all equal to one another in dignity. All of us, even the ones chasing me through the desert, yes. You're required to love one another. And what do I do with this relationship? Lock arms, tikkun olam, repair the universe. Repair the universe? Yes, repair the universe. And the Christians took it whole because the founder of our church was a Jew. He used a different language, but we call it caritas or charity. What is the whole law? Love one another as you love yourself for the love of me. And I am truth. And the truth is God made the world but did not complete it. And your job is to be collaborators in creation. And the Muslims say exactly the same thing. But this isn't just for the church, the mosque, and the temple. It's not just for weekends. It's for every day. It's the only truth that counts. It's all that gives us significance and meaning. What is our mission in life? To do what? To fill this basket of appetites, to feed myself, to drink the liquor, to drink the wine, to eat the food, to make love, and when I'm all out of appetite, simply to expire? How absurd. The only thing that gives it meaning is you're supposed to be involved trying to make the place better, and we don't expect a great deal. Certainly God doesn't. He knows how small we are, how grand the problem is. Just do what you can. Well, a governor can do a lot. Parents can do a lot. An organized community can do a lot. Lawyers can do a lot. They did it in Willowbrook. Now let's do it everywhere else. Thank you, and God bless you.
Accepting the President's Medal on behalf of Governor Pataki is Thomas Small, Commissioner of OMRDD. Commissioner Mall. Governor Pataki is not here today because, as you know, he is in Albany doing the Lord's work, along with John Markey and Betty Conley, and I hope all three of them see eye to eye with John Markey and Betty Conley on Staten Island. Commissioner Mall. Okay. George E. Pataki began his first term as governor of New York State in 1995 during a policy era of smaller government, fiscal constraint, and the scrutiny of efficiency. He was reelected in 1998. Governor Pataki's philosophy of governing is described as believe in people, not bureaucracy, pursue smart ideas that work, and commit to sweeping fundamental change that prepares New York for the challenges ahead. People with developmental disabilities have greatly benefited from the governor's beliefs. In August of 1998, after advocates had implored OMRDD and the governor to find a solution to the residential waiting list crisis for people with developmental disabilities, the governor, standing on the steps of the state capitol, said, "New York is a caring state and a state where we all work to help each other. And today we're announcing a major initiative that is again going to make New York the leader, a national leader, in how we care." New York State Cares is a 5-year plan to virtually end the waiting list for out-of-home residential services for persons with developmental disabilities. Together with other available resources, it is expected that New York State Cares will accommodate the needs of more than 8,100 people currently living at home with their families and awaiting placements in community residence. The historic program is unique, and Governor Pataki has set a precedent for the nation for which families will be forever grateful. It is with great pleasure on this 25th anniversary of the signing of the historic Willowbrook consent judgment that I present the College of Staten Island's President's Medal to the Honorable George E. Pataki in recognition of his outstanding service to all the citizens of New York State. Commissioner Dahl.
Now, to all of you sitting out there, how would you like to be in my shoes? I get to follow Governor Hugh Carey, Governor Mario Cuomo, probably the two most eloquent speakers in the state's history, in the world. I do have to say, though, that on behalf of Governor Pataki, I know how deeply he wished to be here, and I offer his apologies. It was late last week that I was with him in Queens, and as a matter of fact, we were visiting the latest home to open under New York State Cares. But I suspect if you talk to either governor, what they would tell you is when they had a special message, they did not trust commissioners to deliver that message. In keeping with that tradition, I have a letter from Governor Pataki. Oh, I will remember this era for a long time. Dear friends, it is a privilege to be honored here today with my two predecessors, Governor Carey and Governor Cuomo, both of whom took bold actions to improve the lives of individuals with developmental disabilities. Without their commitment to fundamentally change the system of care and to resolve this painfully difficult situation, we would never have reached this day. Many people have gathered to commemorate an event that forever changed the lives of New Yorkers. April 30th, 1975 will be remembered throughout history as the day when individuals were assured that they would have the rights to services and that would afford them personal dignity and a safe place to live. When I became governor, I met with family members, advocates, providers of services, and others on behalf of New Yorkers with disabilities. I became acutely aware that although the state had made a difference in the lives of people who were already receiving services, we needed a long-range plan to solve the problem of the ever-growing waiting list for out-of-home residential care. With input from those who were involved in the system, we created a program that will eliminate the waiting list for out-of-home residential services. On August 19th, 1998, I announced New York State Cares. Since then, nearly 1,700 people have been offered an opportunity to fulfill their dreams in a community setting that focuses on each individual's needs. These opportunities are opening the doors for people and giving them the chance to lead richer, more independent, and rewarding lives. In all, during the 5 years of New York State Cares, over 8,100 individuals will receive a new opportunity to fulfill their dreams. Recently, I witnessed firsthand the difference that New York State Cares is making in the lives of those who are benefiting from this initiative. When I visited 2 New York State Cares homes, one in Rochester and the other in Queens, I knew in my heart that New York State Cares was important, but seeing the faces of the individuals who had moved into their new homes and those of their family members has provided me with a lasting impression. This program is truly about people. New York State Cares is making dreams come true for thousands of New Yorkers. And equally important, we are providing the example for other states that are following our lead and creating similar programs. But as good as we are today, there is still more that we can do tomorrow. Together, we can create an even better future for people with developmental disabilities. We are making a difference in people's lives. I want to thank you for the honor of receiving the President's Award, and again offer you my congratulations to Governor Carey and Governor Cuomo. Signed, Governor George E. Pataki. On behalf of the Governor, thank you.
Thank you, Governor Carey, Governor Cuomo, Tom Moll, on behalf of Governor Pataki. This has been an extraordinary day, an extraordinary event. There is much work to be done. We heard all about that. I just have 2 thoughts. Dateline had a very tough program on community residences a week ago Sunday. We have to respond by, number one, making sure we have quality assurance. That's real. New York certainly does have that. But we've got to make sure that there's balance in the media. So there are problems out ahead. Secondly, I think this college ought to be a center of research and learning and teaching for developmentally disabled issues and matters. We will work with you, Marlene, to strengthen whatever programs you have here, and I look forward to many such conferences like this under the college's auspices in the years ahead. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Safe journey.